Hello, we're here with Coach D today, and we're going to have a conversation about, how to approach circumstances in our family that sometimes are difficult, right, Coach D?
Absolutely. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. And hi, Paula. I'm so happy to be a guest again with you. We're going to be talking about those difficult family situations that all of us have, that uncle, aunt, or grandma that they say things that make us feel so uncomfortable. And we're thinking we have to be there because it's a family gathering, but we really don't know how to act to protect ourselves and our feelings and not to hurt somebody else. And that will look different in different cultures. And Paula, so what would you do if you were in a family gathering and somebody would say something mean like, oh, you shouldn't wear at your age those dresses. They just don't flatter you. And they said it in a public setting. And we all have a grandma like that. Do you have a grandma or grandpa or somebody who just blurs out what they think?
We do, right? We all have one in the family that has to express their thought, and there's no filter. Coming from a Hispanic family, we're very honest, or I grew up with very honest family members that they would tell you if that color does not look good on you, or if you are overweight, or if they would notice any difference, and if that didn't look good, then they would express it. Like it's part of uh, a culture, I think. So I grew up with that thick skin.
And how did that make you feel?
It did hurt my feelings, but then you move on. So I
Right.
think, yeah. What about you? What about your culture?
Well, Polish culture is pretty much like Hispanic culture, but we invented sarcasm and directness. So there's no bubbly, flowery, or whatever else you want to say. Oh, you're fat. Literally, you just straight to the point. Now, it is extremely painful when you're young, you don't know who you are. And I think I'm grateful that one of the things I do in my life is being a coach because I can teach people strategies, what to do to set those boundaries, to enjoy the family gathering, not to get hurt and not to hurt them. Because there's really no point if somebody is 70, 80 years old. I mean, of course, everybody can change. We know we're all have neuroplasticity. On the other hand, if they're 70, 80 years old, really, do we really need to change them? Maybe we can change how we react to it. So what was your strategy to deal with that type of a family member?
I personally would smile, and I would probably be like, "Oh, really? Is that what you think? Oh, okay. I'll take it into consideration." But because I'm very passive, like that's just part of who I am. And now as a coach is like I have to go back into my values, my core values, and you know who I am based on those core values. So it's a strategy that I use, that I go back and be like, okay, based on that, how should I behave? Whenever there is doubt, whenever there is like, okay, how should I behave? Uh, as a coach, I go back to my core values, and then I decide how to behave based on those. What about you?
Absolutely. So I learned that people's perception is what they think life should be. And they're measuring me against what their life should be, how they believe the life should be in their eyes. Their perception does not mean it's my way of seeing the world. Can we ask the person, do you have a lot of money? What is a lot of money? Like, what is that? Is it $1,000 in a bank account or $5 million? And if you're talking to a millionaire, he will not consider $1,000 a lot of money. But if you're talking to a person who's just starting out, a young person, having saved up $1,000, that would be a lot of money for them. And what I do is I always ask myself a question before I react. So I imagine, and this is something I learned from my coach. He said, look, I'm 6'5". I'm like, oh God, you're tall, because I'm being coached online. And he goes, and somebody walks up to me and he goes, you're short. What do I do? Well, I just look at them and I say, okay. And I keep going because relatively speaking, from my perception and in general perception, I'm not short. This is their perception and they have every right to it. So when somebody says, you know, you are, I don't know, ugly or you are fat, I go, okay, I understand that. That's very important that you shared that. But will that touch me? No, unless I consider myself fat. So I'll take that into two aspects. First, if it touched me and it hurt me, does that mean that I consider myself to be that? Because in my eyes, I'm not fat. I'm not skinny, but in my eyes, I am not fat. So if that's their perception, that's fine. They have every right to see that. Now, if their opinion hurt me, first of all, I gave them a lot of power because I allowed them to hurt me. And this is how I received their message. Second, that means I believed what they said, and I consider that something negative. So then actually it's a trigger for me to go, okay, so what is my value and how do I see myself? Because do I see myself as fat? And then somebody calling me out on it, it would be painful, right? Because I don't want to consider myself that. On the other hand, if that person is calling me fat and I don't feel fat, they can say whatever they want. It's like you're telling a person that's 6'5" that they're short. Okay, I'm short. And you move on because that opinion has no meaning in your world. So I would definitely ask yourself, when your family members are hurting you, you receive that as something painful. Do I really believe them? And this is my perception of me? What do I need to do to change that perception of me? So whatever comes at me has absolutely no meaning because I know the truth, my truth.
Yes,
Well,
and there is a beautiful phrase that you and I know that talks about like anything, nothing has a meaning unless the meaning we give it to. You know,
yes.
so if somebody hurt your feelings because they said a phrase that you weren't expected, well, what meaning are you going to give it? Like she said, if it's an older grandma, you can say, well, grandma, you know, like she's not in her 40s or 50s anymore. You know, maybe her mind is slipping a little bit and she didn't mean to hurt you. She was just meaning to express what she, you know, what she saw, and she just wanted to express her thought. So nothing has a meaning unless the meaning that
Unless
we give it to.
assign the meaning to it.
Yes.
Yes, and there's one more important thing with that, you know, our story about the grandma. It is when we look at people, it is very important to think what place are they coming from, especially with people who love us, because very often they come from a good place and their perception of life and their patterns and the way they were raised, they're functioning in the way they know best how. It doesn't mean that they wish us, you know, pain. They want to share because they care. And for example, in their ideology or the way they were raised, which would be my mom, who would always tell me that I'm fat and I need to lose weight. That was my mom permanently. She believed that happiness is combined to a skinny body. So she wanted me to be happy, not realizing that she's having the opposite effect. Now, with that being said, if we look at our parents, grandparents, that they're coming from a good place, it just they're using the wrong communication skills, patterns, methods, we will not take that personally. We'll take it as a good thing that they care. Oh, grandma, thank you for caring, right?
Yes,
And go ahead.
you have to have a growth mindset in order for us to be, you know, like in order for us to think, okay, they don't mean wrong. Yeah, because it takes a growth through life and wanting to mature on our emotional state in order for us to be like, they don't mean it that way. Because there's a lot of people that they get offended and they get their feelings hurt, but it's through self-development, self-improvement that we develop the thick skin, that we develop the right strategies and techniques to think, okay, what meaning do I want to give it to? You know, she expressed what she thought, it hurt my feelings, but it's like, what, you have the power. You have the power to give it a meaning. You know, it could be that you can say, well, she forgot to take her medication, so she's just talking out of the blue. You know, you give it the meaning, you have the power.
That is true. And also, I think you just said the phrase, you have to have thick skin. If you know who you are and you know perception of life and you know that people don't mean mal to you, there's no need for thick skin because the meaning assigned is not hurtful. So there's nothing to protect you from it. You don't have to protect yourself. You don't have to worry that you're going to get hurt because it's kind of like I would say to you, you know what? Your yellow shirt is very, very ugly. And you're like looking at your shirt going, okay, okay. You you know that it is not yellow, you know, it's red, and it's not ugly because you like it. So my perception, by the way, colors are just something that we named. It can be actually yellow, but in common language we use red, but that's a different story. We do actually, you know, kind of, I lost my train of thought. Let's go back, let's go back, let's go back. So if I will tell you yellow shirt is ugly, you know it's not yellow. You know it's not yellow. So whatever I say really doesn't matter. You'll just go, oh, okay, well, thank you for letting me know. And you keep going. There's no need for thick skin because you know what you have, you know who you are. And we're going back again to your values, what you said at the beginning, right? I know who I am. I know my values. So things outside won't hurt me. And if they're hurting me, how do I see myself? How do I value myself? And how do I perceive myself? And how do I connect a word, fat, ugly, stupid, whatever else it is? What does it mean to me? Because maybe I actually do think that about myself and I need to do some work.
Yeah. Yes. It's all
So if we were
about,
to sum it,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go. It's all about,
Oh, it's all about like the relationship that we have with ourselves, you know, like it's that our psychology that we have about ourselves. Whenever we hear a phrase, whenever we hear a comment that you think, oh, really? That's what you think of me? It's like, okay, you know, sometimes it's like you respect what they're saying because if we're mature and if we're in this self-development world, it's like you respect their opinion. But in your psychology, you know that you are better than that. You know who you are, you know your values, you know where you're going. So it is a beautiful strategy for you to identify who you are and what are your core values. Because based on those core values, you can always go back and tap in them and wonder, okay, how should I approach this? Oh, I am love. Oh, I'm courage. You know, it's like if I'm love, then we're gonna try to react with love, right? Even though sometimes it's hard, but if that's our core value, uh, then that's how we define ourselves. And it is challenging, but the more we do it, it's like you build that muscle and you become who you want to be based on those core values.
absolutely. And I think for your audience and my audience, it is very important that you guys explore who you are, what you believe in. If you go into those situations, family situations, where you have those aunts and uncles and grandparents and whoever else that is one of those people that has a different world perception and they mean well, yet the way they communicate can be hurtful to you, always assume that they mean well. It will be very different reception. Always assume they mean well, even if it's not true. As one of our mentors said, if you're lying to yourself, you might as well lie to yourself and help yourself, right? So even if they don't mean well, assume they mean it. You will see it from a different perspective. Two, make sure you accept what you hear and you go, okay, this is their vision. It's not mine, but I respect their opinion. And leave it at that. There's no need to analyze it, think about it, because again, what somebody considers rich, somebody else considers poor. What somebody considers overweight, somebody considers skinny. And it all depends on the views and how we perceive the world. And accepting the different perceptions, it stops being personal. It stops being personal because you know they're comparing you to their worldview, which is not your worldview. So why would you worry about that? And with that attitude, those family gatherings can be much more pleasant. Would you add anything to that?
No, I think that's perfect. You know, the perception of how other people see the world, the perception of how we see the world. If we choose to see that they mean it well, then they mean it well, and then life goes on. Yes.
Exactly. And if it happens that whoever in your family is cruel and for some reason there's no end to that type of communication, you can love them, but not spend time with them. Remember that. This is very important. It's not mandatory. We choose where we go. We are the average of 6 people we spend time with, right? The most often. And if they're not kind of not in your space, they're not people who are supporting you, you can still love them and wish them all the best. Yet you don't have to spend time with them, or you can limit the time you spend with them, the things you tell them, to protect yourself while you're growing and developing and learning so you can thrive. And trust me, it's a phenomenal feeling when you have a choice, and you have a choice. Nothing is set in stone besides the fact that we're born and we die. Everything else is a choice.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. I hope we brought some value into your life. Blessings to you all, and we'll see you soon. High five, Coach D.
Absolutely. High five, Paula, and
Yay.
high five, guys.